welcome. You guys can hear me? I assume? Yeah? Okay. So, Baruch Hashem, we're about to start a brand new Torah in Likutei Moharan, Torah Yud Tes, in the first section of Likutei Moharan, Torah 19. And this is a very exciting Torah. This Torah, different from the last one we learned, is longer and more involved. And it's pretty complicated. It's one of the Torahs that requires a lot of effort to keep things together and to keep the path flowing. So we're going to have to really keep our minds on this one and try to review and keep an understanding of how the flow is progressing in this Torah, because it's not an easy one. But it's very rewarding and very deep. Unbelievable Torah. So we'll get going on that. I want to just show you guys, we have these cards printed as part of our new 3 H's campaign. These are Hiskasher's cards. These are stickers that have on them the formula to be miskasher, to bind ourselves to the tzaddikim, to Rabbi Nachman, with Hebrew and English. And you see it can be stuck. I have it stuck here on the inside of my siddur, right? You can put it anywhere, so before you daven, before you do any mitzvah, we can remember to be miskasher, to connect ourselves to the tzaddik, and to tzaddikim, and to holiness, and to try and really put these concepts into our actual lives, the way we live, and not just talk about them. Mirza Hashem. So that information will come out soon, and I have a lot of these available. If you want one, just let me know, and we'll send them out. We'll put them in the mailbox. You can come by in person, and whatever it is, we'll work it out. Okay, let's get going. So this new Torah 19 starts off really a new section in the Likutei Moharan. We've been doing these. We started off with the first 15 Torahs were the stories of Rabbi Bar Chana. Then we had 3 more stories with other of the Tanaim. The last one was Rabbi Yonatan Mishdai, I think, Yonason. And now we're entering a section where the next few Torahs are taking lines from a section of the Zohar HaKodesh called the Safar D'Tzniusa, or Sifra D'Tzniusa, depending on how you pronounce it. Safar D'Tzniusa is like considered to be by many like the deepest part of the mystical Torah, the deepest part of the Zohar. And so Rabbi Nachman takes lines from this aspect over the next few Torahs and goes into them in depth. So in the way that Rabbi Nachman writes his Torahs, we're going to see over here, just like the other ones, he's going to start off with a quote from a pasuk, then a quote from Safar D'Tzniusa, and then we're going to come back to it all at the end of the whole Torah. So it starts off like this, and this is what the Torah is usually called: Tefillah leChabakuk. It's a prayer by the Navi Habakkuk, Habakkuk Navi, the prophet, al Shigyonis. So he translates it here as someone who erred, but I think it's also the name of a musical instrument. Hashem Shamati Shimacha Yarezi. Hashem, I have heard your speech, I feared. Hashem Pa'alacha Bekerev Shanim Chayinu. Hashem, revive your acts in the midst of years. What does that mean? Hang on for about a month and a half or 2, and we'll find out. The Safar D'Tzniusa says like this: Isabar Safar D'Tzniusa. It's written in the Safar D'Tzniusa. It really means the hiddenmost book. Pirka Kadma, in the first chapter. Ad loy havi maskala, loy havi mashkichin apin v'apin. It says, as long as there is no scale, there is no providence face to face. As long as there is no scale, there is no providence face to face. So let's give a very short explanation of this, because it's a very, very involved matter. But basically, in the realm of Kabbalah, before everybody, we all have somewhat of an idea of the layout of the Kabbalistic spheres, and the fact that they're laid out in 3 columns, right? And you have like chesed on the right and gevur on the left. Chachma on the right, bin on the left, up above, right? Hod on the right, netzach on the left. Sorry, netzach on the right, hod on the left. And they're in these three columns. That is a tikkun. Before that happened, in the early stages of creation, before what's called shviras hakelim, the shattering of the vessels, the seers were all on top of each other in like a single file. And the light that came into these seers was more than they were able to handle for, like I said, much more involved reasons. And these seers had to shatter and break. And the pieces were still picking up until now, right? Which is part of where we get this concept of elevating the sparks of Kedusha. It's from these pieces of the Shviras HaKelim. But the tikkun that began after that was that instead of them going one on top of the other, they spread out into three columns, which parallel the human body and parallel other things, but at the same time, it kind of parallels like a scale. Meaning there's the centerpiece that holds everything up, and then there's a left and a right on the scale, just like there's the center path of the cirrus, and then there's a left and a right. Through this, there's a type of balance. There's a way that the light can be dealt with in a different way. It's a very simple explanation, but that's kind of the idea that it's saying, that until when there was not a scale, there was no mashgichin apin be'apin. So in these spheres that are in these three columns, so we have the partsufim of Abba and Ima, for example, and they look face to face when things are good. We have the partsufim of Yisrael Saba and Tavuna, Yaakov and Leah, that they look when things are good, they're face to face. When things are not good, they're back to back, right? But there was no possibility for this when they're all just one on top of the other. That's a basic understanding of what this is referring to. Everybody with me? We're all Kabbalah experts now? Let's go. Okay, here we go. We're beginning. Says Rabbi Nachman, Ki kasha laha'olam. There's a difficulty that the world has, a question that the world likes to ask. Al ma tzarich linsoya lahatzadik lishmoya mipiv. Why do we have to travel to the tzaddik to listen to the words that come out of his mouth? Halay efshar la'ayin besfarim divrei musar. Can't I just read books and learn musar from books? Why do I have to go and see the tzaddik? L'chaim. Sorry, my throat's dry. It's auspicious that we're talking about going and seeing and connecting literally face to face with the tzaddik when we're starting our Hiskashrus campaign. Okay. Ach be'emes hu toyelas gadol. Really, it's a tremendous toyelas. It's of tremendous benefit to go to see a tzaddik face to face. Ki yesh chiluk gadol bein hashemeya mipi hatzadik ha'emes ba'atzmai. There's a tremendous difference between someone who hears directly from the mouth of a tzaddik himself, and hearing from someone else who says it over in his name. And all the more so, when you hear it third hand from the person who heard it directly, you heard it from that person who heard it from another person. I might have put one more in there. Because every time you lose a level of something. Right? Rachik mipi hatzadik. More distant from the mouth of the tzaddik. And so too, from someone who hears from someone else who heard from the tzaddik, and from someone who just reads in a book, it's even more of a distance away. It's even more distance, right? So, really, there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't appear to be practical at first coming up. But this statement that we just made here, there's a lot to say about this, and a lot of very interesting practical things. One thing is that you see already that it's important that when we're learning the Torah of tzaddikim, that we're learning it with some type of chain going back to the tzaddik. Right? And we're not just picking up the book and deciding for ourselves what it means. Not there's anything wrong with that, and of course we should pick up books of tzaddikim and read them, no question. But there's something to be said for learning the Torah of the tzaddik, learning Rabbi Nachman's Torahs, and having some type of connection backwards to all the way to Reb Nosson, right? So let me give you an example for our little group here, right? I don't just pick up the book and read it for myself and decide what I think is good or not good, or how to explain it. There's some of that. but I look into the commentaries of the great Breslov or Mashbiim. I speak to people in the chain on a regular basis to ask questions and to understand properly. I speak to Reb Nosson Maimon, who is a student of Reb Tzvi Rosenfeld, whose family came from Breslov, right? Reb Chaim Kramer was also connected to Rabbi Rosenfeld. We ask questions to Rabbi Arush. We connect to all these mashbiim. I connect and ask questions to Rabbi Mata Frank, whose family goes way back to Breslov also. Meaning that we're not just sitting here and making things up for ourselves in Thornhill, right? We are connecting ourselves to a chain of face-to-face, mouth-to-mouth, right? We're listening to the words that were said by the previous generation, who listened to the words that were said by the previous generation, actually heard the words from the mouth of these people. And that's how we are forming our shiurim and the way that we learn the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. Because there's something greater to that, says Rabbi Nachman, than there is to just reading it in the book. Right? You may remember that we said that in Torah Daled, that there's something very special and important in reading the books of tzaddikim, and that the tzaddik hides his neshama within the book, and we can see the face of the tzaddik from the books. That still exists, but Rabbi Nachman's telling us now that there's a higher level of connecting to that, and that is when we have either a face-to-face connection with the tzaddik, or we're having a chain of transmission of the Torah of the tzaddik. With me? So this is important. We know, it's obvious. How different is it if we just write down the statements that we talk about in our shiurim? If we just wrote it down. It wouldn't mean the same thing as when we hear it from an actual voice, from an actual face. When we ask questions together with actual people, right? Many times in the different Breslov Sorim, when Reb Nosson is speaking about Rabbi Nachman, he will say how when he was giving over this Torah, that the way that he made movements with his hands, and the way that his face gave us hints, Reb Nosson says that it's something that cannot be comprehended if you weren't there. We saw something amazing, he says, when we were face to face with Rabbi Nachman, and he gave us over this stuff, that if you weren't there, you cannot possibly comprehend it, and he's not trying to make us feel jealous or upset. He's just saying there was something amazing, there's something special there. And we have to acknowledge that we're a little bit away from that. So, whenever we know holy people, whatever opportunity we have to see tzaddikim, right? When the big Rabbanim come into town, we're bringing in, by the way, I didn't announce this yet, but the holy Reb Mata Frank is coming to spend Shabbos with us here in Thornhill, and he's going to do a few shiurim in Toronto the days before also. Shabbos Parshas Vayechi. He's going to be here in the shul. Everybody's invited to come. Seeing such a tzaddik, this man is mamish the sweetest tzaddik around. You have to see him. He is totally amazing, and he's a Breslover from Meir Sharim, from a long family line. He's going to be here in the house, in the shul, for a whole entire Shabbos. Sudas, davening, speaking, and he only speaks Hebrew and Yiddish, but we're going to translate. But to see the face of this man, right now, as I'm telling you that he's amazing, so what's going on in your mind? You're like, okay, sounds interesting, right? But I know him, and as I'm talking about him, my heart is burning. I'm on fire. I go to his sudas in Uman, and to sit there for hours, singing and listening to him speak, and seeing him face to face, is pretty much the highlight of my entire year. And to have that face to face thing, like as I'm talking to him, I'm shaking a little bit, right? And you're listening to me for the first time, having not met him, and you're like, okay, maybe I'll come meet him. And soon you'll meet him, and you'll have something to say like that also. Hashem. What am I trying to say here? I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm pointing out that there's such a difference in seeing such a tzaddik face to face than just hearing about it from another person, right? Very, very important. So and listen, what are we doing here? We're reading the Torah of tzaddikim, and the tzaddik that we're learning is talking about the importance of seeing tzaddikim face to face. This is what we're spending all our time doing, and we all meet together every Wednesday, and most of us every Monday also, and we're getting deep into this Torah, and it's inspiring us and everything. And he's telling us, you got to see holy people face to face, right? So we got to do something about it. We got to try our best. We got to get meetings. We got to go face to face. We got to take what we can, and if not face to face, the next best thing, whatever we can do. It's an important part of avodah is what he's saying over here. Everybody with me? Okay, good. Let's go. So what happens over here? Ki tzarich lezakech es hapanim sheyuchal kol echad liros es panav bapanim sheloi kamei b'mareh. We have to purify our countenance, our face. We'll get to this. We'll understand it. Sheyuchal kol echad liros es panav, that every person should be able to see their own face, bapanim shalo, in the face of the tzaddik, kamei b'mareh, as if we're looking into a mirror. Ad asher beloy toichacha ubeloy musar yischaret chaveroi techef al masav. Without any word of rebuke, without any word of musar, just by looking into the face of a tzaddik, a person will right away regret all of the bad things that they've done. Just by looking into the face of such a tzaddik. Rak mimasha yabid b'panim shelo, just by looking into the face of the tzaddik. Ki hayedei sheyabid b'panim shelo, because through looking into the face of the tzaddik, yireh es atzmai kamoi b'mareh, we see ourselves as if we're looking in a mirror. Eich panav meshuka b'choshech, how much is our face sunken into darkness? Meaning, this is a tremendous power that tzaddikim have. Tremendous power. That they're able to shine something to us without saying anything, without words of rebuke, without negativity. Just that gives us a sense of where we're falling short. Like just from a place of love. Gives us a sense of where we're looking into the face of a tzaddik. It's something that I heard said about Rabbi Nachman before. I don't ever see it inside, but you see it, you can glean it from these words. That Rabbi Nachman has the power to take someone who feels that they're very high and lower them down. And to take someone who feels that they're very low and raise them up. Right? So when someone goes in to look into the face of such a tzaddik, there's a strong dose of truth and a strong dose of reality about who am I, what am I doing, and you're able to feel such a thing. But he says that in order to do this, we have to do something first. We have to prepare ourselves in a certain way. Tzarich lezakech es hapanim. So there's a different question that they ask based on different manuscripts of Likutei Moharan, whether it's talking about that the tzaddik has to do this, or that we have to do this. In other words, to go to a tzaddik, we have to be prepared to be able to receive such a thing, or that the tzaddik has to be on such a pure level that when a person sees them face to face, they're able to shine this light onto them. The Reb Chaim Kramer version of this is that it's the tzaddik that has to become so pure. Okay, so how does this happen? This is the main first thing we've talked about, and we're going to leave it now for a while, is the importance of seeing a tzaddik face to face, and the more we can be connected through other people who saw the tzaddik face to face is better, but face to face is ideal. And through actually seeing a tzaddik when they're on such a high level, we are able to receive some type of almost Ruach HaKodesh, some type of special vision, some type of special mirror to who we really are, that helps us to raise ourselves up and to realize that we have to move. Everybody with me? Now we're going to stop this and move on to something completely different. And as you know, because you're all experienced learners in Likutei Moharan now for 18 Torahs, it's gonna seem like this is a separate point and this is a separate point, and later on they're all gonna come together in a totally amazing way. Okay, so what's the next step? Gimel. Ki goydel yakar ha'erech shel loshon HaKodesh. The tremendously great value of loshon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language, the holy Hebrew language, sheboy nivra ha'olam, that through it the world was created. Everything was created. We're now going to be discussing loshon HaKodesh, the Hebrew language. Now, loshon HaKodesh is something very special. I am not a person who likes to say negative things about anybody, and please understand that I'm not when I say this. But modern Hebrew is not loshon HaKodesh. Modern Hebrew is modern Hebrew, and it employs all kinds of different languages, and it uses certain terms. Loshon HaKodesh is the language, the Hebrew language of creation, is what he's saying over here. It's the language through which all of creation took place. As we've talked about many times, though everything, the universes were created through the Aleph base. It's like a code that exists in everything. And everything has a name in Hebrew that means something much, much deeper than the way other languages work. The Hebrew language is very holy. You'll see one of the things that Reb Chaim mentions over here is that in the Hebrew language, you don't have a word for the male private part, for example. Right? It's called the bris. It's called covenant. There's no such thing as swearing in Lashon HaKodesh. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. People like to make the joke, if you want to swear in Hebrew, you have to use Arabic. Right? or English, or whatever words they use in modern Hebrew speak. Right? But in the actual Hebrew language, we don't say these things. It's a holy language. It's the language of prayer. It's the language of Torah. It's the language of creation. It's the language of Kabbalah. Right? And every word has a gematria. Every word has a deeper root and connotations, and it shares meaning with other things. It's intertwined in a tremendously complex web of meaning and depth. It's totally, totally, totally amazing. There's a famous story that I've been hearing for years. I met this guy one time. There's a guy who was like some kind of prince of some kind of African tribe or something. Some kind of African country. I don't know exactly what it was. Anyway, and he was studying languages and different languages throughout the world. And when he started to study Hebrew, he was like an expert in languages that blew him away so much that he became religious. He converted to Judaism and came to Israel and studied in yeshiva. And I met this person one time. Why? Because he saw something special in the Hebrew language, something different that doesn't exist. So this is something to think about. Loshon HaKodesh, certain Rabbi Shmuel Veffer, he was giving a shiur one time. I was listening to him, and he was talking about Loshon HaKodesh, and he said, these holy tzaddikim, they didn't just read something in the Torah and have like a simple level understanding of it. They knew when they would see certain things, they knew what the gematrias were, the numerical values of it, what it was, and what those numerical values corresponded to. And they knew the deeper meanings of the letters and the Kabbalah and everything just through the letters. It's possible when we say over things in Lashon HaKodesh, especially from the Torah, that we're speaking on infinite levels of understanding, each of us on our own level. They say about the Vilna Gaon, everybody knows who the Vilna Gaon was, right? Tremendous, incredible Talmud Chacham, genius, Kabbalist. And so they say about him that at the end of his life, right? He was such a huge Talmud Chacham. He was the biggest Talmud Chacham ever, basically, right? He was alive at the same time as the Baal Shem Tov. And they say at the end of his life, he only ever studied the Chumash, the Torah, that's it. Not the Talmud, not the Shulchan Aruch, not all of the commentaries, not all of the Kabbalah, none of it. He just, for the last years of his life, just read the Chumash. Why? Because when he read the Chumash, in every single letter was the entire Talmud, the entire Kabbalah, the entire Mishnah, everything was there. That's what he saw. This is the power of Lashon HaKodesh, that everything can be attached to these letters. All the depths of understanding. Totally amazing. So the Hebrew language, Lashon HaKodesh, is not something simple. It's not just that it's good to speak Hebrew, right? And in fact, I'm sorry I'm going on about this, but you see there's some people that actually hold that you should not speak Hebrew. They were opposed to the language of Israel being Hebrew because they felt that this is not, the holy tongue should not be spoken about everyday things. You can't have a newscast in Lashon Kodesh. You can't have a fight with your spouse in Lashon Kodesh. Right? That's what they felt. It's not what happened, and So, Lashon HaKodesh, something very amazing and very special. So it says like this. This is the language of creation, and the language that everything happened with. K'maimer Chazal, like Chazal say, in the Medrash, Bereshis Rabbah, the Torah says, Lazois Yikare Isha. This one shall be called Isha. When Adam Harishon was naming his wife, he first said, this wife of mine here, whatever, Lazois Yikare Isha. She's called Isha. Isha. Right? Which is Aleph Shin He. Why? Ki me'ish lukacha zois. Because she came from Ish. She was taken out from Ish. So she becomes Isha. Loshon neifel al loshon. So the loshon neifel al loshon, he translates over here, it means a play on words. It means one type of word falls out on another type of word. He was Ish, so the thing that came out from him to create his wife is called Isha. Right? Mikan, says the Medrash, a little bit of later, Mikan shenivra ha'olam b'lashon HaKodesh. From here we see that the universe was created, the world was created with Lashon HaKodesh. So there's a few ways to understand this. The main way seems to be that you see that. Oh, let me read this from one of these commentaries in Likutei Moharan. He says it pretty nicely. The word Isha is similar to the word Ish. From here we see that the universe was created with Lashon HaKodesh. So one aspect of it is we see that this was the language that was used in the beginning of creation. You might say that maybe really Adam Rishon spoke a different language, and the Torah is just translated into Hebrew. He's saying no. You see, from the fact that the Torah is telling us that he called her Isha because she came from Ish, that was actually the language they were using, because those two words are linguistically and with the letters are similar to each other. It doesn't work with this one was called Monsieur and this one was called Mademoiselle, right? You can't play that same game. It's because of Hebrew that you can say this one's called Ish and this one's called Isha. So you see that was the language at the beginning of the Bria, at the beginning of creation. And you see that it's Hebrew language that has that these two words are the same. I was thinking, this is my own idea over here, and it could be wrong, but I was thinking that you see also that Adam Harishon used the Hebrew language over here in this way for something that came out from him, almost that he took part in creation with. right? So we're saying it's the language of creation that Hashem created the world with, and this is something that was taken out of Adam HaRishon and created into something else, right? So it's at that point that we say, that you can see from here, that loshon HaKodesh is the language that the universe is created. It's the language of creation, right? Because it's the point where something was created out of him. Hear what I'm saying? Okay. Anyway, Ish and Isha. V'zeh b'chinas Chava. And this is also the aspect of Chava. Eve. Chava. B'chinas v'layla l'layla yechave das. So we say this in our tefillas on Shabbos in Pesukei de Zimra. V'layla l'layla yechave das. Night to night declares wisdom. Says over, declares wisdom. Yechaveh means to speak over, to declare, to express, right? And Yechaveh is the same shoresh as the word Chava. Chava is called Chava. Why is she called Chava? Eve. Why is Eve called Chava? Because she's the Em Kol Chai, right? She's the mother of all life. And Chava is really the shoresh of the word to be alive. Everyone thinks that it's Ches Yud. Hey, but really it's Ches Vav Hey. And Lichiot, the Vav there is part of the Shorish. Hoveh is really the Shorish of to exist, right? Same thing with Ches Vav Hey is the Shorish of life. So her name, which of Chava, means to speak over. It means to declare, to say, right? Hainu bechinas hadibur shel loshon HaKodesh. Chava's name is holy speech. Chava is holy speech. Sheboy nivra olam. That through this type of holy speech, loshon HaKodesh, is the way that the universe was created. V'zeh b'chinas lezois yikare isha. And this is an aspect of what we're saying over here. The pasuk that Adam HaRishon calls her, lezois yikare isha. This will be called isha. Hainu hadibur, which means dibur. V'zois asher diber lehem. There's another pasuk where you say the word v'zois. V'zois, this refers to dibur. V'zois asher diber lehem. So too, the pasuk of Chava is lezois yikare isha. Who's called isha? Zois. What's zois? Is dibur, speech. Another thing we see is that zois is the word that corresponds Kabbalistically to Malchus. The Zohar teaches us this, that Zois is the word referring to Malchus. And Malchus, as we know, how do we know that Malchus has to do with speech? Can anybody here remember? I want to see if you guys are listening when we learn this stuff over. How do we know that speech is connected to Malchus? Anybody remember? I can't read lips, Laurie. You're still muted. There you go.
Voice, the sound is Malchus.
Yeah. So how do we see that? Do you remember? So we saw that in the Kabbalistic structure of the head alone, the 10 spheres of the head, the bottom of the spheres represents the mouth. Malchus peh. Malchus peh. The mouth is the place of Malchus. And if you remember this totally amazing understanding that we had, totally amazing, that you remember, Malchus is the place where the king's will is revealed, right? And the will of the king is what's in his intellect, right? So the main thing that the king uses as his force of leadership is speech. Also, you see that we have another pasuk that tells us that the name for the leader, for the king, is Dabar. Pasuk says Dabar Echad Ledor. It means there's one king for each generation. But it really means there's one person who speaks for the generation. Right? The king, Malchus. Why? Because our mouth is how we take everything that's up here in our intellect and we reveal it into the world. Malchus is the place where will is revealed. It's the outer place where we reveal everything that's going on inside. Right? So the peh is Malchus. So Zois is the name of Malchus. And Zois means dibur. Right? So Lezois Yikara Isha, we see, saying, who's the Isha? Who's this Chav over here? Is Zois. She's Malchus. She's holy speech. So the power of Chava is holy speech. And you see that it's really a tikkun for the avera that happened during the Gan Eden. That there was a lot of negative speech that went on over there between the snake and confusing speech with Chava, right? Okay. So Chava is holy speech, and Chava is Malchus Peh. And the Hebrew language is the language of creation and the language of holiness. Vayirei loshon HaKodesh rememanu mikol halashonos. And it's through loshon Kodesh, it's through this holy speech that we are raised above all other languages and really all other nations. Shekol halashonos ha'amim noiflim al yidei loshon HaKodesh. That all the other languages of other nations fall because of Lashon HaKodesh, through Lashon HaKodesh, through the Hebrew language. Hainu, shehara sheyesh laha loshon shel ha'uma achiza boy. Whatever evil there is that a certain type of language of a certain nation has its grasp on, nisbatal v'noifel ayidei Lashon HaKodesh. It becomes batal. It becomes nullified. It falls down because of the power of Lashon HaKodesh. Ve'ein lo shlita al Yisrael, and through that it cannot have rulership over Yisrael. V'zeh bechinas loshon noifel al loshon. And this is, says Rabbi Nachman, what the Midrash was really saying when it said loshon noifel al loshon, that it's one language falling on another language. It didn't mean like what the simple translation is, which is that it's a play on words. It meant that one language will fall because of another language. Meaning, when we use Lashon HaKodesh in the proper way, it exerts a power into the world. And that power causes the other nations and the other languages to be subdued. This is the power of Lashon HaKodesh. And when you think about it, it's the Lashon of creation. It's the Lashon of holiness. Of course, if we harness it, and if we use it properly, and we express it in the world in the way it's supposed to be expressed, it's going to cause spiritual, creative power to come into the world. That's what it does, right? So if you ever thought you needed another reason, because every single class we talk about holy speech and using our speech in the right way, and not using it to say negative things about other people, not using it even to see the negative and to talk about the negative in the world, certainly not using it to hurt people, to tear people down, to hold authority over other people, not using it for abusive purposes, right? Nivel peh. It blows my mind every time I hear someone using swear words, curse words. I can't believe it. It's mamish mind-blowing. How could we use our vessel of holiness for this? Our Malchus peh for such a thing? If we perfect our speech, chevra, we are putting power into the world. We're putting creative, holy energy into the world. Very, very important. Sorry, I got off there a little bit. This is the power of Lashon Kodesh, of the Hebrew language. So, and we see there's a flow happening here. The power of the Hebrew language is what, of the holy tongue, is what's going to elevate the tzaddik to the level where he has this shining countenance that can give us the ability to instantly do tshuva, basically, right? And we see that this language, this holy language, causes all other languages to fall, and all other evil that those languages are attached to fall. Okay, so let's talk about the evil now. This is the next flow. V'hara ha'koilel shekol harois shel shivim loshon kolim boy. The all-encompassing evil that all of the other evils of the 70 nations are encompassed in, right? Sorry. Pardon me. Like this. Everybody has heard the famous medrash that when Hashem was going to create the world, he went around to all the different nations. And he said, he offered them all the Torah. Right? Because he didn't want them to come back after everything and say, wait a minute, you gave the Jews the Torah and they became the chosen people? Well, you didn't give us a chance. So Hashem went around to all the nations before creation and said, whatever that means, and said to them, take, here, I have the Torah here. So he first went to Edom, the nation of Edom that relates to Rome and Western power, and he said, "Well, here I have the Torah for you." And they said, "What did they say? What's in it?" And he said, "Oh, it says you can't kill." And they said, "Whoa, hold on a second. We live by the power of the sword. This is what we do. We can't. We don't want it." So he went to the next nation. I think in this he went to the nation of Hashmal, and which is the Middle Eastern powers. And he said to them, I might get this one wrong. It's one of two. And he said to them, "Well, here's the Torah. Do you want it?" And what did they say? "What's in it?" And he said, according to one version I heard, he said it's that you can't steal. The other version is that the version that I heard from Reb Nosson Maimon is that you can't have illicit relations. You have to be married. And they said, "Well, hold on a second. That's not the way we do it. We want to be able to have illicit relations, so we don't want it." And one by one, he went around to all the different powers, all the different nations, 70 nations, until he finally came to the Jews and he said, "Hey, I have the Torah. Do you want it?" And what did we say? Na'aseh v'nishma. We don't even need to know what's in it. We want you, Hashem. Right? And that's the story of how we got the Torah. But what do we see from this? That every one of the nations has something, a midah, that they're connected to. Whatever it is. I don't know what they all are. I don't know if they're written down anywhere even. I'm not sure. But, says Rabbi Nachman, and says the Zohar HaKodesh, there's something called the Ra HaKoilel, the all-encompassing evil, that encompasses all of those bad character traits, all of those bad midos, all those evil connections. Dahainu, Taveras Hamadura Shal Taivas Niyuf. What is it? It's the burning inferno, bonfire of sexual lust. Is the Ra that encompasses everything. Shekol Shivim Loshon Meshukayim veChulun, by that all of the 70 nations are sunken into this. This one everybody has their hand in, and it encompasses them all. Neufel. So this Ra HaKoilel, Neufel v'nisbatal ve'ein lo shlita id loshon HaKodesh. Even this Ra HaKoilel can be subdued, can be brought down through loshon HaKodesh. V'zeh b'chinas, and this is what the Zohar HaKodesh says. Madura shal shivim koichavim hanizkar b'Zohar HaKodesh. This is talking about the bonfire, the gigantic fire of the 70 stars that the Zohar HaKodesh talks about. This is Hainu Hara HaKoilel. It's referring to this all-encompassing evil. Shu Taveras HaMadura Shal Taivas Niyuf. It's this burning inferno of the lust. Shekol Shivim Umois Klulimba, that all the 70 nations are part of this. So the Zohar HaKodesh explains this Kabbalistic concept that there's every Friday there's 70 stars that come together by the North Star, I believe, and they come together and they make this one big gigantic fire, and they refer to the 70 nations. And every Friday there's a point where because the first 6 days of the week are the 6 lower spheres, and Shabbos is Malchus, and in order for the Shefa to come from Yesod into Malchus, that point, all of these 70 nations, all of this evil gangs up on it. All of what are called the Shalosh Klipos Tameos, the 3 absolutely tamei, impure klipos. I don't know how to translate this stuff. They all come together and they try to stop the Shefa coming into Malchus. Right? So we're gonna see what this means according to the next paragraph. But it's this gigantic power that's there, that's trying to stop everything from happening. This Ra HaKoilel is there, and this Madura is this bonfire, inferno of spiritual negativity is there, and its base is lust. So, I mean, we see that it's a very powerful enemy, and we see that it's got its hand in everywhere. And you see nowadays it's coming out in all of the media, and it's everywhere on the internet, and it's everywhere you look, you can see this thing, Taivas Niyuf, unfolding. And yes, it seems to be much more with men than with ladies, but we all have a part to play within this, and no one is exempt from this work and this avodah. But it's tremendously powerful, and it tears people down, it tears families apart, right? It can destroy everything. And some of us know it better than others, the negativity that can come from it, for sure. But this, just to point out, I'm not making this up. You don't have to look around. The Zohar HaKodesh tells us that this, or Rabbi Nachman is telling us, this is the Ra, the evil, that encompasses everything. Okay? And the tikkun for it is holy speech. Let's see. We'll just finish up a little bit of this now. Yeah, we're going to finish this paragraph. V'zeh bechinas Hashmal. And this is an aspect of this spiritual energy called Hashmal. Okay, so you know how we just said that when the Shefa, the bounty, is going to come from Yesod, the 3 bad klipas surround it and want to stop it from being transferred into Malchus? So there is a power that comes at that time, which is called Hashmal, which interestingly in non-loshon HaKodesh, in modern Hebrew, is electricity. That's the word in modern Hebrew for electricity. It's a deep Kabbalistic word, and in modern Hebrew it means electricity. But it's a glow of spiritual positive energy that basically wards off those 3 negative klipas and allows the transfer of the bounty from Yesod to Malchus, right? And it's called Hashmal. And it is what is the key to everything we're talking about over here. So what does it mean? Hashmal is an acronym for Chayos Eish Mamalalos, which means you could say either fiery speaking angels or fire speaking angels. But the letters Ches and Shin are Chayos Eish, are fiery angels. Bechinas Chava, Isha, which is an aspect of Chava, Isha. Chava, Isha. Chayos, Eish. Chayos is a word for living creatures, living angels. Chayos, which is like the name of Chava, which is Chaya. And Chaya and Chava are really the same name, right? And then Eish is the word for Isha. It's the same letters. Chayos, Eish is Chava, Isha. You hear? Chayos, Eish, Chava, Isha. It's the same words. So the first 2 letters of Hashmal, of this beautiful spiritual energy, are Chava. Are Chava, Isha. Which we said is what? Hainu bechinas loshon HaKodesh, which is holy speech. The power of an amazing Jewish woman with holy speech. A Jewish woman who has holy speech and who doesn't use her speech to tear down is just the most powerful thing in existence. The people that she could build up, her children, her husband, through positive, powerful, holy speech, it's such a huge power, a huge responsibility. So that's what Chava is, holy speech. Shal Yadoy, that through it, Mismalel u'mishtaber eish hamadura shal shivim kechavim. Through holy speech is how we break down and destroy this inferno of the 70 nations. V'zeh bechinas mal mechashmal. This is the last 2 letters, mem lamed, of Hashmal. Through ches and shin, Chava Isha, which is holy speech, we're mal, we cause to be destroyed this bonfire, this big gigantic inferno. Shem bechinas madura shel shivim kechavim, which is the fire of the 70 nations. Shenismalo v'nisbatal al yedei loshon HaKodesh. It's through holy speech that it becomes wiped out. Ki al shem zeh nikra loshon HaKodesh. This is why it's called loshon HaKodesh. This is why it's called loshon HaKodesh. You ready for this? What does loshon HaKodesh mean? Holy speech. What does Kodesh mean? What does Kedusha mean? Why is it called this? Chichol makom shata moitzi geder erva, says the Medrash, any place where you see that a person puts up fences to stop immoral sexual behavior, geder erva. They put things into place to control themselves, to stop them from being involved in these types of situations. Whenever you see someone doing this, ata moitze kedusha. That's where you find kedusha. Kedusha is, in one of its most basic and important definitions, is being totally separate from this type of behavior. Right? Yosef Azadek, right? The idea of a tzaddik, kadosh, to be holy. The word kadosh means in one way to be separate, like period, to be separate. But in particular, to be separate from this type of behavior. Says the Medrash, Kol makom shata moitze geder erva, wherever you find people putting things into place to get away from immoral behavior. Ata moitze kedusha, that's where you'll find kedusha. And we see that it's loshon kodesh, it's holy speech that knocks out this big, gigantic fire of taivas niyuf. Why is it called loshon kodesh? Because this is what it does. It destroys that existence. It destroys taivas niyuf. It destroys immoral behavior. It destroys lust. It's not called loshon kodesh because we're like, oh, it's the holy tongue. It just sounds nice. No, it's because it creates holiness. It creates kedusha, and kedusha is a place of purity, a place that's free from all of this type of lustful behavior, right? You see that in Rabbi Eliezer Brody's translation of Rav Arush's books, when he talks about this aspect of what's called Shmiras Habris, guarding the covenant, he translates it as personal holiness. Right? Because this is what it is. It's personal kedusha, living in such a way where we stay away from this stuff. So I think we'll hold it there for today. It's a lot to digest, and it's a complicated Torah, but it's going to get into some really, really, really amazing stuff. It's going to be fantastic. So to wrap up, we have to start off by trying our best to see tzaddikim face to face, and if not, doing whatever we can to have some type of connection on the highest level we can attain to the tzaddikim, because the tzaddikim have the ability to give us the ability to do instant tshuva, to see like a mirror without any words who we really can be, and what strides we can make. And how do they get to that level? Is through this aspect of holy speech. And holy speech is connected to Chava Isha, right? The holy Jewish mother, and pure holy speech. And it's the holy speech that is able to knock down all of the evils that surround us, basically. The evils of the 70 nations, and in particular, the Ra HaKoilel, the all-encompassing evil of lust. And we have, I think this is something, if I could say so, that's a really positive like kind of effort that we can make. Everybody knows, we know that using our speech in a positive, pure way is good. Right? We know that it's terrible. We don't like, it's hard for us to be around people who are always negative. It's hard for us to be around people who are always saying lashon hara or have like filthy mouths. It's difficult to be around such a thing. We want to be people like this. So what a great opportunity to take something that we know is good and to take something that we know makes us feel good, and let's work on it. Let's try and bring it up and work on our holy speech this week. And next week we'll see where it takes us through the rest of this Torah. Oh, not next week. So the next week is Hanukkah, and we are going to not have our classes over the week of Hanukkah. So we'll have 1 week break, and we'll be back right after Hanukkah with the Lost Princess Chabura on Monday and the Likutei Moharan on Wednesday. So we're going to all be with family and with the different friends, hopefully on Hanukkah. Let's put holy speech into practice. Pardon me, and see what we can accomplish. And I look forward to seeing you all after Hanukkah. So everybody come and get your card of Hiskashrus, your sticker. Mirz Hashem, we'll kick it off. Okay, have a great week, everybody. All the best. Freilich Hanukkah. Bye-bye.